Who is the greatest female wrestler of all time? Sup y'all, welcome back to the review space. In this video I want to talk about, well, who is the greatest number one top female professional wrestler, wrestling superstar in history of all time. Who is the number one greatest, the GOAT, G-O-A-T, female professional wrestling star? I think it's an interesting question because I did just finish talking about, I'm saying Charlotte against Becky Lynch, and those two I think are either like, one of the most popular or one of the greatest female superstars ever. Both of them, either one of them. Like Charlotte is one of the most accomplished, and Becky is one of the most popular of all time. So it's kind of interesting, this particular topic. Who is the greatest of all time? You know what I'm saying? Like, and if you ask different people that question, you can list probably just a few handful of names, especially the ones that grew up in a certain period. When you think of male wrestlers, a lot of people will say somebody like a Hulk Hogan or a Stone Cold or a Bruno Sammartino, somebody like that, somebody who is a lot more well known, a lot more established, and somebody that's it's easier to come up with a male top list, or just even like a number one greatest male wrestler of all time. But with the females, it's a little bit more of a challenge, because this women's revolution or divas revolution, it's only been recent in WWE, but female wrestlers have been around for a long time, but they've never really had that huge push. They've never had a huge spotlight, at least not in the mainstream. You'll have your cases of Japanese female wrestlers, which most people don't really know much about here in North America. You have the old school names, right? You have old school names from the past. So somebody who's like a female wrestling star from 40, 50 years ago, most people will not know about these women because they're not as highlighted, and there's probably not a lot of footage of that. So every now and then I'll go check out YouTube. I'll watch a female professional wrestling match like from the 1970s or something like that, and just check out what women's wrestling was like back in the day. So, I typed in this particular topic on Google. You type on Google, you see a bunch of lists on there. And immediately, they show the photographs of certain individual names here. Like professional wrestlers, female. I put down list greatest female wrestlers all time. And immediately, in this list, they came up with Trish Stratus, Lita, Chyna, Charlotte Flair, Paige, Sasha Banks, Mickie James. You got the Fabulous Moolah, Becky Lynch, Medusa, Mae Young, Alexa Bliss, Beth Phoenix, Bayley, and Stephanie McMahon in the first couple of first choices here on the Google thing. It's basically just the images that immediately pop up. But I want to actually look at an actual list from a website. Let's go with Ranker.com. The top 30 plus best female wrestlers of all time, ranked by wrestling fans, from Ranker.com. I'm going to give my opinion on this particular list and see what's up. Alright, waiting for it to load. Let me see this list right now. What do you have, Ranker? Alright, so let's get to it. So number one that they chose is Trish Stratus. Cool. You know what? I appreciate Trish Stratus. I think she is definitely one of the greats. I do think she's a lot more overrated than people give her credit for, though, as far as in-ring and match quality. She's a very good performer, no doubt, and I can see why a lot of people would choose her as number one. Very beautiful, very, very photogenic, and very attractive. So she's got that appeal. She was pretty good in the mic as far as cutting a promo. She's able to get herself over. She's able to play a heel, a baby face. She's actually pretty good as a heel type of character. I remember back in the mid 2000s when she had that stranglehold on the women's championship. And she held on that title for like a year, back in between 05 and 06, something like that. And so she was very dominant. She was almost like the female Triple H in a lot of ways of the women's division back then. There wasn't really a lot of choices back then too, as far as pure talented female wrestlers. You have a Lita and so on and so forth, maybe a Victoria, but Trish was really the face of that division for the mid 2000s. She was she was good. She was a good choice, but it's kind of like she was a big fish in a small pond. Unfortunately, there really wasn't much to choose from, and the women were not heavily focused upon at all back in the 2000s generation of WWE. But Trish, not a bad choice as the #1 pick here at Ranker.com. She actually has what is it? They got ups and downs. She has 449 ups and 290 down. Again, the overrated thing for me is with Trish is that I can't really remember too many amazing matches from her. As far as having that incredible, like the matches now were way better than the stuff that she delivered. Now, she had some good matches with Lita. She had good matches with Mickie James. So every now and then she'll have some good performances, and she is a good performer. I just feel like she's been surpassed by other stars in the ring. She's been surpassed by other female talent. I might even argue that Charlotte is better than her. Becky Lynch is better than her. Maybe even Alexa Bliss is better than her. So, but what Trish stands out the most with is that she's a star. She's got a great look. She's good on the mic. She's got some charisma. She's very beautiful and all that. So she looks like a superstar. She looks like she plays that role. She can be slotted in that top position, and she's the poster child of female wrestling. So it's more about her reputation as somebody that carried a relatively irrelevant division back in the mid 2000s. She was a pretty good wrestler. It's just that I feel when she gets ranked like #1 constantly, I think it's just a matter of people that grew up in the 2000s or they watched WWE in the 2000s. And really, she's been there at the tail end of the Attitude Era. I think she started appearing maybe in like 2000, around that early 2000, something like that, as a an on-screen character with the cowboy hat and all that. But people are just more familiar with her work because they grew up on her work. They saw her when they were younger. I remember her when I was a kid, back in the day, when I was like 13, 14 years old, something like that, when she started out, and it was like, oh, okay, she's hot, you know what I'm saying? And then she got better over time. She became an actual really solid performer. It's just that because she happens to be the 2000s face of women's wrestling, at a time when wrestling was still relatively getting good ratings, WWE was getting good ratings in the early 2K. People see her as pretty much one of the few women to have a long-lasting impact. Now, I would even say that Chyna is ahead of Trish Stratus as far as greatness overall. Chyna was absolutely incredible. All right, number two. Number 2 is Becky Lynch, which is absolutely interesting to me because Becky is relatively new. I know that she's really popular right now. She got 408 ups and 256 down, and so she's definitely got a pretty decent following. She's one of the more popular female wrestlers probably of all time. Definitely, I've already talked about how cool of a character Becky Lynch is. She definitely has that tomboy appeal and that relatability, and she's just and she's got a good look. Cool hairstyles. She's a pretty good looking woman. She's pretty darn good inside the ring, can perform and really have some pretty decent matches, and she's got a star presence about her. Her character, the Man, is definitely a very a cool character. It's something a little bit different, I guess. Kind of like a female Stone Cold almost, but she's likable. And she's probably going to main event WrestleMania as one of the first females to do it this year. Against Ronda Rousey and maybe even Charlotte. So Becky Lynch is up there as number 2 is pretty high. Like that's very high. I'd probably rank her slightly above Trish Stratus, but I don't know about number 2 or even number 1. Becky Lynch is definitely popular, but I think she has to accomplish a lot more to be ranked even in that top 1, top 2 atmosphere. She's got to have more amazing matches. She's got to have a lot of great quality feuds under her belt, and she has to be a lot more accomplished. There's got to be more things, and she's getting there. She's the Women's Royal Rumble winner. She's already a former couple of times SmackDown Women's Champion. She's on her way probably to become a WrestleMania main eventer. So there's a lot of things that she's doing right now that is putting her in that position to become one of the greatest of all time, and she's very popular. But at the same time, let's calm down a little bit and putting Becky Lynch as the top 2 of all time. Just because she happens to be the most popular female right now doesn't mean that she's the second greatest of all time. That is absolutely not the case. You know what I'm saying? China accomplished more than her. There's women out there that held the championship for far longer than Becky Lynch. You know what I'm saying? People like a Fabulous Moolah. People like I think Nikki Bella held the Divas title a lot longer. People like AJ Lee held the title a lot longer than Becky Lynch. So, Becky's she's definitely on her way to becoming one of the top female stars of all time. But number 2 of all time right now, it's a little too high. Number 3, Charlotte Flair. She's highly accomplished. She's done a lot already. On paper, she is definitely one of the greatest as far as her accomplishments. I've already talked about it in the Becky Lynch versus Charlotte comparison. But Charlotte is definitely, she's done so much already. I think it's also just, we're in a time where the WWE, they don't have single amazing, must-see stars. They don't have that unifying star anymore. They don't have Stone Cold Rocks, Hulk Hogan's anymore, where they focus on a single individual. It's more about having some stars that feel kind of a big deal, but not the greatest thing in the world. So Charlotte she's definitely pushed out there as the face, or one of the faces in the women's division, but she's nowhere near the level of an Austin or a Rock or a Hulk Hogan in their prime. She feels more almost like a female Bret Hart, or a female like a female Seth Rollins or something like that. A female even like a Roman Reigns to a smaller degree. Roman Reigns, I would say, is ranked a lot higher just because he's been the face of WWE, or they try to make him the face. But Charlotte has been, they try to make her the face of the women's division in a lot of ways. She does a lot of media appearances. She's got the gold around on her shoulder. She's usually the champion doing that stuff. And she's in a relatively good position in WWE, very solid position as a main event female type of wrestler. And she is accomplishing a lot. She's having great matches. She's having these landmark matches, the first ever female cage match and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So she's having some firsts under her belt, which is a very good thing. She's like a pioneer in a lot of ways. I think in 20, 30 years, we're going to look back at Charlotte Flair's career and be like, wow, she was definitely one of the best in that time period and one of the most groundbreaking female stars of all time. So Charlotte is a good contender. Number 3 is not a bad position in Ranker.com, not a bad slot to be in. It's just that because she's so young, we're gonna have to wait and see how much more she can do in her career and how long she lasts. We never know. You don't know how long Becky Lynch is gonna last. You don't know how long Charlotte is gonna last. That's another thing, is that we don't know the longevity of these females. We don't know how long their career is gonna be. They could retire tomorrow. They could retire next year, some of these girls. Look at how long Ava Marie lasted. Ava Marie was there for maybe a few years and then she was gone. You know what I'm saying? You got, what's her name? Caitlyn. Caitlyn was a Divas champion, I think, at one time, and they were trying to push her as the top female, and then she disappears after, 2014. Same with AJ Lee. AJ Lee accomplished so much, and then she was gone after a few years. Paige, she ends up retiring after just a few years of, being a wrestler in the WWE. I mean, I know she's a performer for a long time, but in the WWE, she was there for maybe about 4 or 5 years, on the main roster, and then she had to retire because of injury. So these women, we don't know how long they're going to last. Longevity is a big thing, too. Trish's career, she ended up retiring, around 2006. She was inducted to the Hall of Fame in, 2013? You know what I'm saying? So Trish Stratus was there for 2000, early 2K to 2006. So she was there for only about 6 years in the WWE. Same with Lita. Lita was 99 to 2006. These girls, they don't have they don't have lengthy careers. You know what I'm saying? Molly Holly, the same thing. these girls, they just a lot of them don't last very long. They accomplish, some of them accomplish a lot, but they don't have longevity because of injury, retirement, that kind of thing. They want to try other things. They got to start a family. I mean, Ronda Rousey is a perfect example of that. Ronda Rousey she was there for about a year, right? It's coming up on a year. This year's Mania is going to be a full year for her performing on TV as a WWE superstar, and she's going to go away probably like around after Mania. Maybe she might do one more pay-per-view, but she's going to be gone for a while to raise a family, to kind of cool off and take a break. So these women, they don't have incredible longevity. Only a few girls do. Every now and then, like sometimes a girl will be around for like 10 years, or 15 years or something like that. But that's a lot more rare in the wrestling business, and I think it's because of injury or either starting a family. They want to try other different paths and careers, and they end up quitting wrestling. So we don't know how long Charlotte Flair is going to be around. We don't know how long Becky Lynch is going to be around. So right now we're judging these individuals on their current role, what they've accomplished so far, but we don't know the full story of their career quite yet. Alright, number 4 is Sasha Banks. Wow! Sasha is number 4. She has 393 ups and 274 downs. Sasha Banks. Yep, she's accomplished quite a lot so far, although she's never really held the women's title on Raw like a lot of for too long. She held it a lot of times, 4-time women's champion on Raw, which is pretty impressive, but they're always like usually really very short reigns, They never fully went all the way with her, with Sasha Banks. It's like they'll give her the title, she'll have the belt for a couple of weeks, and then they take it off her, which I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's because they got to give it to somebody else. It's almost like a hot potato with the woman's title. I don't know what it is about Sasha Banks. I have no idea. From what I remember, she was relatively popular back then, a couple of years ago. She had some really solid matches against people like Bayley, against Charlotte, etc. But they've never really fully went all the way with her. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's great, but I don't know. I don't know why they've never really fully 100% got behind Sasha Banks. Maybe there's some other things that's going on backstage that we don't know about. Maybe it's attitude problems, or who knows what it is. Marketing issues. I don't know. But number 4 is a little too high too, I think, for Sasha Banks. She's done a lot for the business, no doubt. She's accomplished relatively well, especially for being so young. I think she's still in her 20s as of this point, late 20s. But she's if she can last another 10 years, maybe 15 years in the business, again, another one who's a young wrestler. We don't know how long she's going to last in the business, but if she can last another decade, she can probably potentially accomplish a lot more. I fear that we've seen the peak of Sasha Banks, unfortunately. I feel like we've seen her as NXT Women's Champion, had classic matches. The Raw Women's Champion had some great matches. But because they never fully went all the way with her, and she's had some moments here and there, but she's never been like the number one face of women's wrestling in the WWE. She's never been in that position, so it's almost like, well... And now, as she's getting older, and then new talent are coming in, new faces, new women from NXT, and these new signings and new additions, it's like she's going to have even more competition and even more women to compete against. And now, especially earlier this year, with the whole, she might want to quit, she might want to go to AEW, and all these different things where maybe she might end up leaving. And I know that she ended up, I heard she became the tag champion along with Bayley. But it's like, that felt more like, okay, we're going to give you the tag titles. You guys are going to be the inaugural women's title. I mean, not the first ever, because Jumping Bomb Angels, but you guys are going to be the first ever in this lineage of the women's title, tag title. We're going to give it to you because it's a token win, so that you guys don't go somewhere else. So you guys re-sign and have your contracts extended and all that stuff, so you guys don't jump ship to another company, another rival company like AEW or something like that. You know, WWE, they've made Sasha Banks in a lot of ways. You know, she's one of their female stars. She's a former champion and all that, and so the risk of losing a Sasha Banks or any of the top females they have that's still a big risk for WWE. They still don't want any of these people to become become a rival and go to a different company and be part of the competition. They want to keep these people as long as possible so that at least they don't travel somewhere else. So it's like, hey, you want to see Sasha Banks? We got her. We're not going to push her to the moon, but we're going to have her. We have her featured in our roster. We have Bayley, we have Charlotte, we got Asuka, we have so on and so forth. All these different women. So number 4 of all time, I think also it's just there's so few women in WWE to choose from, especially like in its history of like who's the greatest of all time. You could say like Fabulous Moolah would be up there. You could say Wendy Richter might be up there as far as accomplishments. Even though again that's another female that didn't last very long in the WWE was Wendy Richter. Even though she was the face of women's wrestling in that mid '80s rock and roll period. There's very few women to choose from. So it's like the ones that stick out are the current modern ones that are having good matches from NXT. Sasha, Becky, Charlotte, Asuka, those kind of individuals. And speaking of number 5 next up is Asuka. The 5th greatest female wrestler of all time is Asuka. I'm kind of mixed on Asuka. She's horrible on the mic. She's got absolutely no mic skills. Can barely speak English and cut a promo in English. So that's already a huge detriment for her. That's already like a big negative for her. I don't really want to see Asuka. I don't really care much about her because I can't connect to her character. She kind of just yells on the mic. She speaks in this thick Japanese accent. She doesn't really speak English. Some few words and a few phrases here and there, but she can't really cut a 20-minute promo that's like understandable. Asuka is not fluent in English. That's the problem with signing a wrestler from overseas, from Japan or something like that, a country that doesn't have native native English speakers, and they have that thick accent that you can't even understand it. Guys like Shinsuke, Hideo Itami completely struggled in NXT, and he's gone now. Asuka, I think Asuka has accomplished a lot as far as winning titles and having, she got that long streak in NXT, very very long, 914 days undefeated, which ended at WrestleMania 34. It was absolutely incredible. She kept winning and winning and winning. It says here she's 267-0. 267 wins and no losses in the WWE, which is very impressive. They kept her strong and they booked her really. I don't know why though, because I was never fully convinced with Asuka as a believable, undefeatable a machine, like a beast, somebody this like a powerhouse or a monster that rolled through everybody. Like the whole undefeated gimmick, really, that the whole streak thing only works with certain individual wrestlers that are like convincing and believable monsters or beast type wrestlers that have size, believability, a mean streak, an absolute, bad ASS type of presence about them, absolutely believable force, unstoppable. People like a Goldberg, those kind of individuals. Even somebody like Samoa Joe in the mid-2000s, between Ring of Honor and TNA. I remember when he was undefeated for a long time. I remember when Kurt Angle was undefeated for a while. He was undefeated for a little bit when he came in WWE, WWF back in the day, late 90s. So certain wrestlers will be like, oh, I like that they're undefeated right now. That's a pretty cool streak. They're on a hot streak. They're very convincing. They're big. They're jacked up. They got huge muscles. They look like a monster. That's somebody that you would give to somebody like Lars Sullivan or Bobby Lashley or Brock Lesnar, and you go, I get it. That person is believable. But Asuka, she's not even the biggest female they have. On a physical level, she's very short. She's got some in-ring submission skills and all that, but it's like, so does everybody else. Everybody else has a submission finish too, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's on top because what? She's Japanese? Because she's a foreigner? Because she's what? I don't get it. I've never believed the hype with Asuka, she's a good in-ring performer, but it's like that's about it. You know, she's got some colorful outfits. You know what I'm saying? You know, she's kind of a good-looking chick. So, but it's like she's number 5th greatest of all time is kind of horrible. It's like really, for real? She's the 5th greatest of all time? Like, she's really the top? Like, in what planet? Like, how is she believable? How? She's short, can't really cut any promos. She's got some physical charisma, some, you know, actual physical movements where you go, oh, and I kind of like her, or she's kind of entertaining, but that's about it. She's got physical charisma, and she's got a kind of a decent, colorful, like, look, and she's got a kind of a, you know, a mystique about her. And that's about it, you know. I think, like, Charlotte is better than her. Alexa Bliss is better than her overall. You know what I'm saying? Becky Lynch is way better than her. Becky Lynch is a lot more likable than Asuka. You know, Asuka is a good performer, but, like, that's about it. Asuka caters more to the smart mark, like, New Japan type crowd. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's the kind of individual you would market to the indie, kind of nerdy culture, you know what I'm saying? But not so much to the casual mainstream culture. You know, she's a good performer, but, like, she's not somebody that you want to see cutting promos for 20 minutes or, you know, get over a segment for, like, 10 minutes. You know, she's alright. She's alright. She's kind of in the middle for me. I wouldn't even rank her as in the top 10, let alone the top 5. Alright, number 6 is Paige. Poor Paige. You know, poor Paige. What a tragedy, you know what I'm saying? Somebody who had so much potential, somebody who could have been one of the top females of all time, very good in the ring. She's got that pedigree as far as having that family lineage. She comes from a wrestling family in the UK, England, you know what I'm saying? And so she's a really good wrestler. You know, in the ring, she's got the talent. She's got some good she can cut a promo. She's got a good look, very, you know, that beautiful, pale, pseudo-gothic, pseudo-punk rock look to her, you know, with the dark hair and all that. Almost like a 2010s version of a Joan Jett, you know. If you've ever seen Joan Jett, the female musician that sings, she actually sang Ronda Rousey's entrance, da-da-da-da-da-da, bad reputation, da-da-da-da. You know, she had a lot of good songs back in the early 80s. She used to be a member of a rock band called the Runaways back in the 1970s, one of the first ever female, you know, all-female rock bands that had some success and had a long-lasting, you know, legacy. They were great, you know, and Joan Jett was one of the top female rock artists, in my opinion. You know, she had this beautiful, like, pale skin, very pale, kind of a pseudo-gothic punk rocker look with the black hair. You know, she looked like a rock star. Maybe she was a rock star. And Paige is kind of like a modern version of her in some ways, you know what I'm saying? Paige, man, she just had so much potential, but she got injured. She got injured by Sasha, you know what I'm saying? Back in, I think it was late 2017. So her career is over. You know, as for now, I don't know if she'll ever be back in wrestling because that's a life-threatening injury when she suffered that thing. You know, that was very, very serious. It really took away her ability. And so she was a Divas champion, held it at the same time as the NXT Women's Championship. You know, she was definitely one of the top female wrestlers in the world when she was on top back in 2014. And unfortunately, that was basically her peak. That was her prime in the business, I think, was 2014, when she held both belts at the same time, and she was the face of women's wrestling, or she could have been the number one face of women's wrestling. I think it was AJ Lee for a little bit, for a while actually, AJ Lee and Caitlyn, and then transition into the NXT women. And really, Paige was the first of the NXT generation of you know, the pre-women's revolution or evolution or whatever. She was the first crop of that NXT generation of females in the early mid 2010s to really establish herself and become like the first. Her and Emma, you know, her and Emma having those good matches, and then eventually with Charlotte and Sasha and Bayley and all that. So definitely Paige was her legacy is going to be more of being somebody that paved the way, you know, for the NXT women, somebody that was one of the first and the youngest too, one of the youngest female superstars of all time in WWE to accomplish a lot in a very short amount of time. It's just that she had so many different like scandals, you know, the different like X-rated tapes and all that, the leaked tapes and all that with Brad Maddox, you know, all this controversial stuff with Alberto Del Rio, all that stuff. She wants out of her contract. I remember that was a long running thing where almost every other week there was a controversial story between her and Alberto, like talking trash or getting drunk or getting into a fight or something like that. And it was like, what's going on with Paige? Like, does she even want to be in WWE anymore? And then they were planning on making that stupid movie about her family and all that, which nobody asked for. I saw the documentary a while ago. The family documentary she had, and it's kind of a cool story, but it's like, what's the point? Like, who cares? You know what I'm saying? No, I guess it's because WWE invested so much into Paige. Like, they thought that this girl was going to be around for like 10, 15 years as a top female wrestler, and because she was so young, it kind of made sense that, okay, she's like 20, 21 years old, and she's already like the NXT champion, the women's champion. Like, yeah, she's going to be around for like the next 10 years, so we got to make movies about her. But it's like, no, she's completely retired now, and she did become an on-screen like GM type of character, but you can't really do much else with her. She can't be an in-ring performer anymore, so she can't be a top female wrestler. She's gone. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think that Paige is the greatest of all time, and to rank her number 6 is kind of high. It's a little too high for me, but she's probably, you could make an argument as the top 20, top 50 type of female wrestlers of all time. Certainly in terms of accomplishments and legacy, maybe she might make it the top 10, but all the way at the bottom, like number 10 or something like that. But even that feels a little too high for Paige. I think that her career was just way too short. Way too short. She could have done a lot more in her career. She could have contributed a lot more in the ring and became even more accomplished. But, she got injured. Too bad. Number 7 is Amy Duma. That's Lita. I don't know why they listed her as Amy Duma. She's Lita. That's her. People know her as Lita. Lita. I don't know why this stupid website just put her as Amy Duma. But anyway, she's number 7. Lita was great. In her prime, Lita was definitely one of the best female wrestlers of all time. Definitely one of the most influential. You see a lot of young women, or the current female wrestlers right now that grew up on the late 90s, early 2000s wrestling in WWE, that Lita is one of their influences. She's definitely one of the best, for sure. You know what I'm saying? As far as the stuff that she's accomplished. She's a former, like, multi-time women's champion. She's had some really good matches against Trish, Stephanie McMahon. And this was at a time when the women were not focused upon. You know what I'm saying? They did not get that much airtime. And Lita stood out because she had a cool look. I kind of see Lita as, like, the previous generation's version of like a Becky Lynch. When I look at Becky, especially when Becky first came out on the main roster, and I was like, Becky is kind of like the modern day Lita. That not exactly the same gimmick, very different gimmicks and characters, but their presence as a kind of a likable, relatable, cool character, like a cool chick, like a tomboyish cool chick. And Lita was kind of like that. She wore the baggy pants, the cargo pants. She kind of looked like a female version of the Hardy Boys. She's a Hardy girl kind of thing. The high-flying moves, she had a cool presence about her. You know what I'm saying? So Lita was definitely a unique character in her time. I think what drags Lita down was that she never really had any classic promos. I always thought that Trish had a better mic skills than Lita. Lita was okay on the mic. She was just kind of like had this kind of bland. She wasn't cutting like these amazing, funny, or interesting, or charismatic promos. She was just her presence was enough to kind of be a likable character. But as far as having like incredible promos, she really wasn't like that. I think that Alexa Bliss is better on the mic than Lita. Even other individuals like even like Zelina Vega is better than Lita on the mic. Lita was okay on the mic, but it's more about her presence, her in-ring ability, her look that really made her stand out. Her tattoos and all that. She was a cool chick back in the day. So Lita's definitely an all-time great. As far as number 7, again, it was a different time back then. So, like, how do you judge her against somebody like a Charlotte, or a Sasha, or a Becky, or Alexa Bliss, or Asuka? Because she's not competing with those women anymore. Or not even, not anymore, but at all. She never competed in that generation. She's in her like early mid-40s now. So she was never a part of the modern day Divas Revolution. She was before that. You know, she was a precursor to that. But because she was main eventing back in 2004 with Trish Stratus, you know, they had that Raw Women's main event for the Women's Championship. I still remember that. That was a tremendous match, but it was like, that was a different time. You know, I remember she botched that too. Like, she basically fell on her neck. That was such a brutal spot. Brutal botch. I felt so bad for Lita, man, because she worked so hard and she was such a, you know, tremendous performer. So, Lita's an all-time great. Definitely, she's up there with the greatest females of all time. Definitely one of the most influential of all time. She might be number one most influential female wrestler ever, just because of how cool she was, how she influenced the younger generation, people like a Bayley or a Sasha, or you know, these younger girls that came up. Yeah, you can make an argument for Lita as the number one of all time. You know, just because, but those mic skills kind of drag her down. Maybe she, yeah, probably like top 2, top 3. You could make an argument for Lita. All right, number 8 is AJ Lee. Wow, AJ Lee. Yeah, and that's another girl that, like, she accomplished a lot when she was young. She's actually my age, AJ Lee. That's right. That's right. She was born just She was born just I think a month before me. So technically, again, we're like from the same generation, but you know, you got these girls that's currently on the main roster, like Becky Lynch and Charlotte and Ronda Rousey, that are around my age. You got AJ Lee, who left the WWE like years ago, but she's the same age as us. You know, she's the same, like, she's 31 years old. Realistically, AJ Lee should still be in the WWE, still doing her thing and having good matches. She should be part of the Women's Revolution or Evolution or whatever. She should still be in the main roster in WWE, but because of the stuff with CM Punk and all that, and that huge fallout, and her, you know, now husband, you know, getting married to Punk and having that relationship, that really soured the relationship between WWE. That really kind of made her distance herself away from the WWE, and really kind of that relationship fell off. You know, she broke it off, and that's unfortunate because, you know, she was probably one of the better in-ring performers. She was a precursor to that women's revolution. This was at a time when the women were not getting much. This was still like in the early 2010s, you know, 2011, 2012, 2013, when the women were just, they were still treated like a bathroom break, you know, on the main roster. You know, they'll have like 2-minute matches, you know, 3-minute matches, and it wasn't very important. But AJ Lee had a special place in the company. She was able to achieve so much as a on-screen character. You know, they gave her a lot of airtime, cutting promos, and being in a position of power, whether it's like a GM or an authority figure, you know, that kind of thing, where she was involved in different storylines, you know, with different like top stars, CM Punk, you know, kissing CM Punk, and Dolph Ziggler and Daniel Bryan and Kane, you know, these different individuals where she would come out and be a distraction or be an on-screen temptress, you know, that kind of thing. So AJ Lee was used in a certain way that was like she felt important, you know, she felt like not influential, but somebody that was like oh, look, it's AJ Lee, like, alright, cool. Like, she's gonna do something. She was somebody in the company, you know? She wasn't just some chump, nobody, like, female jobber that nobody cared about, you know? She wasn't like a disposable female that was like, she's gonna be fired next week. You know, for a while, she was the longest reigning Divas champion until Nikki Bella broke her record. She was a 3-time Divas champion, right? And, you know, she was very accomplished. In her short time in WWE, she did a lot. So you could make an argument for AJ Lee as top 10, you know, probably top 10, maybe even top 5. But I think the one thing that drags down AJ Lee for me is that, I know this sounds kind of shallow, I never saw her as like the hottest female ever. You know, she was a little too skinny, she looked like a boy with long hair, and she looked like a kid, really. She looked like a young teenage girl. She didn't look like a full-grown woman, like a Tori Wilson or, you know, Charlotte or somebody like that. She looked more like a skinny little undersized, like, waifish girl, you know, that's like super skinny or kind of anorexic and just kind of like a quirky, average looking girl. You know, she was very average looking. She was mediocre looking. You know what I'm saying? And so I was never like fully impressed with AJ Lee. I just kind of saw her as like, oh, okay, look, it's AJ Lee. She's here to cause some trouble. You know, she was a troublemaker. You know, somebody that would be inserted into a storyline to cause some chaos. But I never saw AJ Lee as this like incredibly hot, you know, and sexy, beautiful woman that everybody should be focused on. You know what I'm saying? She was I don't know. She was missing that superstar quality to her. She was missing that superstar appeal. You know, I just kind of saw her as average looking. So that's from a pure male standpoint. You know, I never fell in love with the AJ Lee character. No, but she did accomplish a lot, you know, as far as what she did in WWE. Number 9 is Gail Kim. That's kind of surprising that Gail Kim would be included here because she accomplished a lot in TNA, but in WWE, she had good matches with Awesome Kong, you know, or Amazing Kong, whatever you want to call her. Karma, Awesome Kong, Amazing Kong. They had good matches, and they were very instrumental in TNA when they were establishing the TNA Knockout Women's Division, and that was a big important thing that made that division really must-see as far as in that period, that 2007, 2008 period where they were having good matches and they were having classic feuds and all that. But I never saw Gail Kim as like one of the greatest of all time. I think like in the ring she was good, but I don't remember her cutting classic promos. She never had a dynamic or interesting character. She was more of an in-ring, you know, you'd have like these vanilla midget type, you know, these bland wrestlers, but they're really good in the ring. Somebody like I don't like a Johnny Gargano or something like that, or somebody who doesn't have that much of a character, but they're very good in the ring. Gail Kim to me she never felt that impressive, you know. In the ring, sure, she had some good matches, but as far as an overall package where she, like, I had to watch Gail Kim because she's so hot, or she cut amazing promos, or her gimmick was so incredible. I wouldn't even say that she's the greatest TNA knockout of all time. You know, I'd probably give that to somebody like Awesome Kong or Rosemary. You know, Rosemary is a far more entertaining or interesting character than Gail Kim ever was. Gail Kim was good in the ring, but you gotta have more than that. You know, you gotta be more than just an in-ring performer. You gotta have the other stuff too. You gotta have a unique look. You gotta have a great character, very charismatic, and great mic skills. And she didn't have much of that. Everything about Gail Kim was in ring. You know what I'm saying? And she did have that female Asian kind of like that fetish that people had. Some people have for Asian women because she is. I don't know if she's Korean or what, but I know she's from Canada, or you grew up in Canada or whatever, but she's obviously an Asian woman, so some people kind of saw her as this sexy female Asian fetish kind of thing, like, oh, she's a hot Asian girl, you know, dang, you know what I'm saying? Some people kind of saw her as that, which, you know, she is relatively attractive, but I never thought she was like the hottest chick in the world, you know what I'm saying? Not even close, so, you know what I'm saying? Like, she was more of an Asian fetish, mixed with a pretty good in-ring performer, but aside from that, you know, she's almost like an Asuka, you know, a North American version of Asuka in some ways. Although I would say that Asuka has a lot more physical charisma than Gail Kim. You know, Asuka is her mannerisms, her facial expressions are a lot more entertaining than Gail Kim. And is that it? Oh, okay. So number 10. I'm just going to do the top 10 because this video is going to be way too long. Number 10 is Natalya. Natty, wow. Oh man, Natty in number 10. On one hand, I respect Natty's in-ring ability. She's very good, and she's definitely she came up in the dungeon and all that, you know, the Heart Dungeon, and she has been the Divas champion in the past. I think that way back in like 2010 she was the Divas champ, and so there was a time when she was pushed as a champion in the female division, right? And then she eventually, I think she ended up becoming either the SmackDown champion or I think she was the SmackDown champion at least one time, if I'm not mistaken. I think she defeated Naomi, or Naomi beat her, or something like that, along that around that time. But Natty is good, and she's been around for a long time. She's like like an old veteran now. You know, she's like in their mid-30s now. And so she's one of these veteran females that could pass on some knowledge to the younger girls and be almost like a mentor to them. I don't know how long Natty's going to last in the business. She's already been around for many, many years, and she's had a long tenure, especially compared to the other females. You know, she's probably going to retire probably the next 4 or 5 years, depending on how long she wants to keep going. But I doubt that, you know, she's probably closer to the end of her career than at the beginning of it. She's not, you know, in her early 20s anymore. Back in the day when she was competing against Michelle McCool for the inaugural Divas title, this was back in like 2008. You know, she's been around for a long, long time now, and Natty's good. I just don't see Natty. She was never put in the top position in women's wrestling in WWE. In any of the generation, whether it was the late 2000s, the early 2010s, or in the modern day, you know, mid 2010s, late 2010s period of the Divas Revolution, she was never pushed as the #1 female wrestler. She was always like either relegated in SmackDown, or kind of used as somebody that would lift up the other wrestlers. You know, have the NXT tournament and be in the finals with Charlotte, but then Charlotte would beat her for the NXT Women's Championship. So she was like she would be a #1 contender, but she would never be the champion, or she would never be the face of that division. You know, I think again she would hold a title very, very rarely every now and then, but she always felt like somebody who was never fully at the top spot. You know, they never went all the way with her as a marketed top female. And I think it goes to show you that maybe it's because she's a part of the Hart family. I don't know if it's because they don't want to push the Hart family at the forefront anymore, you know, because of the bad relationship with Bret back in the past, and the Montreal screw job and all that stuff, and that horrible fallout, you know, between the Hart family and the McMahons. And maybe that's a long-running thing. I don't know what it is, but Natty has been reliable. She's a great in-ring talent. She's pretty good on the mic, and also to like I think charisma-wise or microphone skills-wise, she never really stood out that much. You know, she never cut like these incredible promos. She never had like a fascinating or interesting character. She was just kind of there. She's an in-ring performer, and she's a good hand, but she was never one of the greatest characters that they've had. Like Alexa Bliss had a better character. Sasha Banks has a better character. You know, Paige had a better character. You know, certain female stars, you know, Becky Lynch has a way better character than Natalya ever did. You know, Natty was just kind of there as a, you know, one of the Hart Dynasty members, and then into kind of her own, you know, cat lover, you know, cat female thing. Whatever the heck she's doing with the cats, I don't even really get it. Maybe it comes from Teddy Hart, I don't know. But Natty never felt like the top female. So as far as accomplishments, she did really good, and she had a pretty solid, long-running career, and she's great as a reliable hand. But I would not say that Natty is one of the top of all time. She might be in maybe the top 20, top 30, or something like that. So as far as the greatest female wrestler of all time, it's tough for me because I never grew up in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, or the 80s, so I wasn't there to see the older female stars of the past. You know what I'm saying? All the older women that established themselves back in the day that we don't even know much about. You know, whether it's the Japanese female stars or the old school American women from like the 1950s and 60s and even before that. You know, even stuff like Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young. It's like I didn't see their younger work when they were young and young women in their 20s or early 30s in their prime. I wasn't there, so I don't know much about their work in the past. You know, I didn't see the footage. The greatest of all time. When I think of the greatest of all time, I mean, when I was a kid, it was China. When I was a kid, it was China. China was highly accomplished. Joanie Laurer. It's hard to pronounce her last name without saying like Lawler. It's kind of like, you know, the King Lawler. Joanie Laurer, which she was a member of DX, and I'm really stoked, really happy that she's being inducted as one of the the DX Hall of Fame members this year. It took forever, like it's about time, you know what I'm saying? Finally getting inducted into Hall of Fame. Obviously way overdue, and you know, a little too late. It's better late than never, but like it really should have been when she was still alive. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, she passed away, obviously, and so she's gone now. She can't really accept it herself. But it would have been great to see her accepted as part of the actual Hall of Fame, where she would give her actual speech and give her thoughts and opinion, and just see her benefit from that. See her, be accepted back physically into the company. China is the first one that comes to mind because she accomplished so much. When I was a kid at the height of the Attitude Era, this woman, she was jacked up, had a great look, very unique, very muscular. She had size. Very muscular, but she also had a presence about her. Like she never spoke, hardly ever talked. So she had this quiet bodyguard, female bodyguard thing. But because she was a woman, you didn't really want to touch her. Like the boys, the male wrestlers, didn't really want to hit her. But she would hit the boys. She would do a low blow or a run in or something like that, or smack the opponent in the in the back or something like that. Sneak him from behind when she's defending or fighting for Triple H or one of the DX members, Shawn Michaels or whatever. So Chyna was great in that the opponent couldn't hit her because you can't really hit a girl. You look like a piece of garbage if you hit her, but then if she hits you, it's like, oh, okay, that's fine. But so it was a great heel tactic. It was a good plot device. But Chyna accomplished a lot. Former Intercontinental Champion. The only woman to hold the IC title from the men's division. She was able to be a part of that as the only female. The first ever woman to be a part of the men's Royal Rumble. This was back in the day when we were many, many, many years away from having a female Royal Rumble. That was not even a thought back then in the late 90s, early 2000s. And she was a part of that. She became a part of that. A convincing woman that looked good. She had the muscular physique and all that to be able to convincingly eliminate somebody like Mark Henry in the Royal Rumble. Eliminate one of the boys, one of the guys. And she paved the way for women like Beth Phoenix. Women like Nia Jax. Those kind of females. It's like a convincing, tough woman. But Chyna was great, and in the ring she was actually pretty good. Like if you ever saw, I think I saw at least one match of her in Japan where she was actually trying. She was actually like a good in-ring performer. In WWF she was used more as a character. She was used more as a lackey, like a bodyguard or almost like a female manager type thing, where she would be on ringside, but she would be used as a distraction, somebody that would interfere in the match, something like that. But she was never, she was never having like these 20-minute matches, the way that women have now. These long Divas Revolution or Women's Revolution matches. So back in the day, she was used more as a character. She was used as a manager type that would be a plot device, somebody that was a part of the show. She was a part of the background. But she played her role perfectly. She was a perfect bodyguard type of, female heel character. She was likable. She could be likable. Like I remember when DX was cutting a promo. It was this was at a time when it was Triple H and the New Age Outlaws, Billy Gunn and Road Dogg, and all three. And also I think X-Pac also. So all four of them were like in the ring. And Chyna was there too, and they were like, "Listen, guys, I think it's time for the DX split, guys. It's time for us to show them the split. It's time for us to break up." They were basically telling the crowd, "It's time for DX to no longer be a thing. We got to break up. We got to split up." And then Chyna was like, "Listen," and this was one of the rare times that Chyna would be heard. Like one of the few times that we would hear her voice. She hardly ever spoke. And she grabbed the microphone, she snatched it away from Triple H's hand, and she was like, "Listen, I think this crowd is sick and tired of seeing your guys' crack every single week. I think it's time that they do see the DX split, but I'm going to show them a different kind of split. If anybody's going to show them a split, it's going to be mine." And the crowd was like, "Oh!" And then she turns her back to the crowd, pulls down her pants, and gives them a full moon. It was tremendous. She was wearing, I think she was like wearing a thong or something like that. But the crowd was like, damn, got a big pop from the crowd. And DX and Triple H were like, yeah, and it was like a great little swerve, and they weren't breaking up, obviously. They were just gonna pull their pants down. But it ended up that Chyna was the one who did it. So they were definitely very funny, and Chyna could have, she really did have charisma, you know what I'm saying? She had some presence on her, and even the stuff that she did with X-Pac, the stuff that she did with Eddie Guerrero as the Mamacita, Latino heat and all that. And one of the reasons that, hey, Eddie Guerrero got over because of her. Triple H got over because of her. You know what I'm saying? So, if I had to choose who is the greatest WWE female on-screen character or female superstar of all time, I gotta go with Chyna. She's number one to me. I don't know about of all time because, again, I don't have that historical 50, 60 year, 100 year context. I don't know the history going that far back, and I'm not old enough to remember the past like that. But I am old enough to remember and grown up in the Attitude Era, the late 90s and all that. And Chyna was number one. She accomplished a lot more than, way more than the other females back in the day. And also, too, you're talking about Sable did Playboy and all that. Well, so did Chyna. You know what I'm saying? Chyna did Playboy, too. So she had the the X-rated appeal, too, back in the day. And it was like, she did so many things. And she was releasing triple X tapes, leaked tapes with X-Pac back in the day. That One Night in China, this was in the early mid-2000s or something like that. This was way before the Paige leak tape. This was way before Victoria, way before all those girls, you know what I'm saying? And now you're seeing a lot of nude leaks from different females, like Charlotte and all that. All these women, that's leaked nude pics from this woman or this female wrestler, etc. Chyna was one of the earliest ones I could think of that had a female wrestler from back in the day that had an actual leaked triple X tape, an X-rated tape. You know what I'm saying? So it's and she accomplished so much, and she did adult movies and all that. So all these different things, even Sunny. You could think, oh, well, Sunny did that stuff too. Well, Chyna did it too. So you know what I'm saying? She covered so many different bases, and now she's going in the Hall of Fame. She's so accomplished, it's crazy. Former women's champion. She won at WrestleMania. I think she squashed Ivory at WrestleMania, if I'm not mistaken. One of those girls back then. You know what I'm saying? Man, Chyna was awesome, man. She did so much in her career, and it really is a shame what happened in the end. It really is a shame how she basically got, I don't know if she got ran out of the business or ran out of WWE, but just the falling out between her and Stephanie and Triple H and all that, and Triple H ended up with Stephanie instead, and having her heart broken and all that. That was a sad ending, and obviously her passing away and all that. That's a sad ending ultimately, but she's, in my opinion, she's going to go down as probably the number one female wrestler in WWE history, and by default probably of all time, because WWE is the biggest company of all time. It's they're the most important company. So that's it for this episode of the Review Space. This very long video, definitely a little too long, but I wanted to get as much. I wanted to talk about this topic as much as possible, and that's it for this particular episode. It's been almost an hour. Tune in next time for more videos. Subscribe to the channel. And, go check out my Becky Lynch versus Charlotte video. I definitely wanted to break down Becky Lynch against Charlotte Flair. Go check that out. That's already uploaded on my YouTube page. And, click on the bell button for the latest notifications. Until next time, peace.